everybody for joining us today. We are very excited to welcome you in the last day of this IAOM MEA Virtual Technical Meeting Forum. I can promise you that today we will be very excited. We have a wonderful speaker. We have wonderful presentation with a lot of knowledge. We will start today with our two moderators from Klüber Lubrication. We have Andreas Wossner. Hello, Andreas. Hello, Paolo. So Andreas come with more than 23 years of experience working for Klüber Lubrication in engineering. And we have also Paolo Spolaore, the head of global industry, coming with more than 17 years of experience in this industry. So Andreas, Paolo, welcome. Thank you. The screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I will see this one. Okay. Let me share my screen. So can you see it already?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. So hello, everybody. Today we will learn a little bit about lubricants and lubrication. And Paolo and myself, we are from the company Klüber Lubrication. And just that you have a short idea what and who Klüber is. No. Again. Now it's working. Okay, this is the first slide. We can skip this one. Okay, so Klüber Lubrication is already more than 90 years in the market. It was founded by Senior Mr. Theodor Klüber. This is where also the name comes from. And since about 55 years, we are part of a big company called Freudenberg. And big part Freudenberg, right, sorry. So Klüber is having more than 33 subsidiaries around the world in different countries. And in the countries where we do not have subsidiaries, we have channel partners. So especially in the MENA region, where you guys are coming from, we are working with channel partners. Klüber has around 2,500 employees, meanwhile, around the world. And also, beside of these 33 subsidiaries, we have 14 countries where we have our own production and manufacturing plants. So Klüber is not only manufacturing and selling the lubricants, we are also designing the lubricants by our own. Therefore, we have more than 200 employees which are only doing research and development. So lubricant is the main part, you know, lubricant is for for bearings and for chains, but it's much more. We have lubricants which are used for conveyors, we have for compressors, you can see electrical switches, gearbox oils, linear guides, everything. And as you know, lubricants, oh, sorry, I think there is one slide missing. This is not what I wanted to show. Sorry for this. Okay, we have to skip this one. What I want to say now is the lubricants we are manufactured by our own are very special, and mainly because we also have a huge business in the food industry. We take a lot of care about the raw materials. So the raw materials which we use for our products are all according to the NSF H1 approval. I don't know whether you have heard about it. We will come to this later. All the lubricants for the food industry we manufacture are going hand in hand with halal and also with the kosher requirements. All the raw materials we use for the lubricants are 100% in compliance with the REACH and with the TSCA approvals. Maybe you have heard about this one. I don't know. We will also come to this in a later step. So I was told to explain a little bit the details, what exactly is a lubricant. I don't know exactly if you are a specialist, if you're coming from maintenance or whatever is your job in your company, but to explain you what is a lubricant used for. My experience from the market or when visiting customers is that the majority of the people, they underestimate the part a lubricant is playing in the production or in the machine. So you can see here on the screen, lubricant is mainly used for the separation of surfaces. And if a surface is not separated, what can you hear then? You can hear this squeaking noises. So, and as soon as you have a noise, you have friction. And to reduce this friction or to avoid this friction, this is what the lubricant is used for. So while you have a machine which is well lubricated, you can, of course, prevent downtime, less maintenance for the machine. A well lubricated machine is also decreasing the energy consumption. And of course, the lifetime of the machine is increased. So a lot of people have heard about lubricants and they talk about a grease and an oil. And the third main part of what we consider to be a lubricant is a paste. So what is exactly the difference between an oil, a paste, and a grease? So first of all, the material which is lubricating is always the oil. So this means even if you have a grease, the oil is the part which is giving the lubrication to the machine. So an oil, yeah, it's basically an oil, and we put some additives into well, you know, maybe the most well-known one is corrosion protection. And depending on what type of oil you want to manufacture, you add up to 10% of different additives. So the big difference between oil and grease is then that a grease contains a part which we call the thickener. And maybe the easiest thing to understand what a thickener is, you just can compare it with a sponge. A thickener is a kind of sponge which contains the base oil. And if you apply this grease on the lubricating point, the sponge will release the oil part for part. So, and beside of the thickener, of course, also the grease contains additives. Sometimes, depending on the application, a grease also contains solid lubricants. Solid lubricants are mostly used, for example, if you have a very, very high temperature and the temperature makes the oil or the base oil evaporate, then you still have the solid lubricants which can take over the lubrication. So, and just a quick look to the paste. The difference between a paste and a grease is the amount of the thickener. You can see in the chart that a paste can have up to 50% thickener. So this is a very huge part, and of course also a paste contains additivation, and the paste normally also contains a lot of solid lubricants. Good. Viscosity grades. I think everybody of you have heard about viscosity. Viscosity is always related to an oil. So this means the lower the viscosity, the indicated viscosity is, the more liquid is the oil. And you can see here on the left side on the screen, the ISO VG. VG stands for viscosity grade, and it starts normally with 2 and goes up to 1500. And just for the one of you who has no idea about this, let's compare it. Water, if you take it as an example, has a viscosity rate 1. So an oil with the viscosity number 2 is a very, very liquid, a very, very thin oil. The viscosity is always indicated at 40 degrees Celsius. And the higher the temperature gets, the lower gets the viscosity, meaning the more liquid the oil gets. So very easy to understand. If, for example, you have a high temperature application, you need an oil with a high viscosity, because as higher the temperature is going, the lower the viscosity will get. And as you can see here from this slide, the indicated viscosity, of course, always is the middle value, because you never, when you produce an oil, you never will meet exactly viscosity grade 2. So we have a range, and the range is indicated on the right side of this chart. And maybe just to give you an idea what the different viscosities are used for. For example, if you have a high-speed application, a bearing which is moving very, very fast, you need, of course, a low viscosity. And if you have, the more slower the application is, the higher the viscosity can be. So just to give you an idea, hydraulic oils, for example, are used to be between 32 and 68 centistokes. Centistokes is the range you measure the viscosity in. If you go to gearboxes, depending on the application in the heavy industry or if you drive a normal motor, you have viscosities between 150 and 460. And if you go to very heavy used industries, you can have viscosities up to 1,500. So, talking about additives which you put into the oil or into the grease. I already mentioned the corrosion inhibitors, but we have much more. Maybe one of the other famous one is the so-called EP additive, the extreme pressure additives. When I go visit customers, I always can hear we are using EP2 grease. So this is a standard grease which has an NLGI class, softness class 2, and is additivated with some EP additives. This is a classical standard multi-purpose grease. And beside of this, you can see we have VE improvers, which is viscosity index improvers, meaning if you have an oil which has a good viscosity improver, this oil will not lose the viscosity, not to lose too much viscosity while rising the temperature. You can see we have foam inhibitors, which is especially used for gearbox oils to avoid that the oil is foaming into the gearbox. We have anti-wear additives, sometimes UV indicators, just to prove whether the oil is where it should be. You can use a UV lamp, and the UV additives will show that the oil is still here. We have pure point depressant, antioxidants. So this is all different additives which are put into the oil or into the grease. So the challenge we are facing is, on one side, we need in our production high performance, and on the other side, while talking about food grade lubricants, we need to be compliant with food grade regulations. So this means if you manufacture greases for food manufacturing industry, we cannot take every single raw material. We have to go with rules of this NSF organization, which is the short for National Sanitation Foundation. This is an agency in the United States, which is considered to be the strongest or the hardest organization in regards of release of raw materials, especially for lubricants. So all the lubricants we are using, all the raw materials which we are using for our lubricants are in accordance with this NSF regulations. Okay, I already mentioned H1 lubricant. So what is an NSF H1 lubricant? So yeah, okay. Here at this point, I will hand over to Paolo, who is directly coming from the food team. He is more able to explain in detail what H1, H3, and so on is. So Paolo, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Andreas. Hello, everybody again. So now we go a little bit deeper into the topic of food grade lubricants. What are the registrations that allow us to call the lubricants the food grade lubricants? So when we talk about greases, oils, and pastes, what Andreas explained you about some minutes before, there are mainly two registrations, H1 and H2. In the slides, you see more, and I will explain you in a second what they are. So when we talk about the NSF H1 lubricants, we talk about lubricants that can go in incidental, unavoidable food contacts. So lubricants cannot anyhow get in direct contact with food, but we talk about incidental food contacts, application where you cannot technically avoid it. H2 is another registration that is, let me say, a lower level of food safety. So lubricants can be used in the food environment, so in the food facility, when there is no way that the products can go in contact with food stuff. Yeah, it's in light gray, and I will tell you in the next slide why. There are other registrations for products that are present in our portfolio. The first one that is pretty important for some application is free age. This is not a mistake. We didn't invert. It's because there is a number in front instead of a letter, because we talk about another category of products. Here we talk about a release agent that can go in direct contact with food. One typical example is, for example, the bakery industry, where you want to cook your biscuits inside the oven. You need a very thin film of a release agent to avoid the biscuit to stick on a surface of the tray. But as this product will touch the food, it has to be much safer than an H1 lubricant. So we have another registration. There is also another one that is called HT1. Here we talk about heat transfer fluid. I don't know if you have in mind a possible application, but I give you one easy example. If you are producing mayonnaise or sauces or ketchup, you have to cook them. So you will put all the ingredients in a very big pan, in a kettle, let me say in an industrial kettle, and you need to heat it up in order to mix the ingredient properly. And to heat up this kettle, there is a serpentine of oil that has the function of transfer the heat from the heater into the kettle. And for this, you use heat transfer fluid. Usually, heat transfer fluid are high volume. So the serpentines and this kettle are pretty big, so there are many hectoliters of oil there. And if something goes wrong, you may have a leakage and contaminate your production. So this is why the HT1 products exist, because they are made with ingredients that are much less harmful than the industrial lubricants. There are further two registrations that may be interesting for you. You know that sometimes in the food production, you need to clean bearings in chains. And can you use an industrial solvent there? Not really, because it's not the safest product in the food processing area. And this is why there are products that are developed under certain criteria and have the NSF P1 registration that classify cleaning agents or degreasing agents that you can use in the food industry, but outside of the process area. Typical example, I dismantle the bearings or the gear from the machine, I bring it into my warehouse, and then I can use this product, but not close to the machine in production. And there is another registration, the K3, that is glue removers. For sure, you also know labeling machine that use glues, exactly, and glues release some residues that sometimes you have to clean. And this is why you need the glue removers, typically in spray or in liquid. When we talk about incidental food contact, there is one important thing to keep in mind. We are talking about minimum quantity in the order of parts per million. So just to give you an example, products that are based on mineral white oil or polyalpha olefins, that is a synthetic base, the maximum allowed contamination in the food is 10 ppm. So it's really minimum. This is why even if the product is H1, we have to take the maximum care of adopting best practice to reduce at the maximum the possible risk of contamination. Another question is, okay, but how does a product obtain the NSF H1 or H2 or VH registration? In this slide, there is a little bit of process. So I will tell you about the NSF H1, for example. So there is a positive list of raw materials that the lubricant manufacturer can use to make an NSF H1 lubricants. So the Food and Drug Administration created quite some time ago a list of raw materials that we can use. And this is the know-how of the lubricant manufacturer, how to mix together these compounds in order to obtain a performing lubricants. And this is the know-how of Klüber in this case, because the positive list is the same for every lubricant manufacturer. And it's up to us, to our know-how, to use them, to mix them properly to obtain the most performing lubricants. So once we have developed our recipe for our high-performing grease or oil, we send back to NSF sample of this product and the receipt. NSF verify that really the product does not contain any substance that is outside of the positive list. And once this check is done, they release a certificate. So the certificate is given for every single product, meaning that if I have, for example, a gear oil series with several viscosity, every single viscosity must have its own certificate, its own registration paper. NSF is a public website that you can use yourself. There is a very good search engine, very easy. You can search a product by commercial name or by the name of the manufacturer, and there you will find the registration letter. If you don't find a registration letter there, be careful. Maybe better that you ask twice your lubricant supplier, because the product may be not correctly certified. We see in the market sometimes that some lubricant manufacturer register, for example, the product name, the product series, for example, Klüber oil. Yeah, let's see. But this is not correct, because you have to register the Klüber oil 100 viscosity, Klüber oil 220 viscosity with a different registration letter. This is the correct way. The H2, for example, follow a slightly different path. So there is a negative list of substances that are considered toxic. Out of this negative list, the lubricant manufacturer can use whatever he wants. And this is why this category is a little bit lower in terms of food safety. You maybe now wonder, okay, where and how can I use this product, these different registrations? In the past, there was this concept. So I use H1 above the food production line. Why? Because in case I have a leak of lubricants, a leak of grease or an oil, it can fall by gravity directly into the food stuff. This is why I need the highest level of standard. Below the line, for example, when I have a gearbox that is moving my conveyor in the line, I use the H2 because in case of leakage, it will go in the floor and not in direct contact with food. The H2 registration is in gray because this concept is obsolete. Why is it obsolete? Of course, in the food industry, it's really important to avoid risks. Risk can be brought by the machine, by the condition of the machine where I work, the environment, but also by possible human mistakes. If you are in maintenance and you have to deal with a lot of stuff, a lot of components, and in your warehouse, you have a mix of H1 lubricants, H2 lubricants, and industrial lubricants all together without a clear classification, it's pretty not easy, but it can happen that an operator take the wrong products, for example, in industrial one or in H2, and use it in a bearing that is above the line. So our recommendation is to use H1 lubricants wherever you can. Nowadays, at least the Klüber lubricants are very high performing products. So in the past, we thought that the food grade lubricants, as it is developed with a limited list of raw material, is not really performing. But we demonstrated rather the opposite. There are food grade products that we sell even in the steel industry, for example, right because they are safer and they perform very well. So nowadays, you don't have this problem of food grade lubricants lower performance. No, right the opposite. The free H, as I said, can be used on the conveyor of your line. Usually they are very thin film oil, low viscosity, as Andreas explained before, right to release the food from trays or for conveyors. Whenever you need to clean your components, when you dismantle a bearing, for example, and you have to inspect the bearings you need to clean, remember to use the NSF K1 cleaner. This means that the solvent and the cleaner that will remain a little bit on the surface of the bearing will not be toxic, will not be dangerous, so you can put back and install back your bearings on the line without changing the bearings, for example. Yeah. Now there is another very delicate point. Why is these certifications important? Because there are, in general, industrial lubricants, low-performing lubricants, cheap lubricants, could contain dangerous substances. One example that is very important in the market is these two substances that we call that are called MOSH and MOAH. MOSH and MOAH stands for mineral oil saturated hydrocarbons or aromatic hydrocarbons. These are Sometimes the market confuse MOSH and MOAH with, in general, mineral oil. So we think that if we use a product that is based on synthetic oil, automatically they don't contain MOSH and MOAH. This is not true, it's too easy. MOSH and MOAH are two fractions of the hydrocarbon chains that can be even inside synthetic lubricants or in some additives that are contained in the lubricants. And this is why we have to take really care on the choice that we make on the lubricants. Usually, food grade lubricants contain, the risk that food grade lubricants contain this MOSH and MOAH are lower. But you know that due to the fact that the positive list of NSF is pretty old, so it's written here, it was created in the 1970s, so more or less 50 years ago, and it's not been updated. This positive list still contain, for example, mineral white oil, medicinal white oils. Probably you heard about them. And as a medicinal white oil is pretty cheap, there are a lot of cheap products that are food grade. They are in the market and they can be used in the food industry. But you have to be aware that if you use this product, they are usually low performing because based on white oil and they contain MOSH. White oil is a saturated hydrocarbons. So if you have this risk of contamination, we rather recommend to talk with your lubricant supplier and prefer synthetic base oils. MOSH and MOAH doesn't come only from lubricants. They are ubiquitous substances that are more or less everywhere. So even in the air that we breathe. So the smoke from the exhaust of our car, for example, contains these substances. Insecticides, solvents, sprays, paints that we use even at home contains these substances. But as lubricants is one of the substances that go closer to the food in your production line. This is why we are talking about this topic. So many things have to be considered. As it is a topic that regards contamination, you are maybe wondering, is there any law or regulation that I can refer to when we talk about MOSH and MOAH? Not really. The regulation is now developing in these years. The reason why there is no regulation yet is that measuring this precise fraction of molecular inside another hydrocarbon, inside lubricants, is very difficult. The analytic methods are making tremendous improvement in the recent the recent months. Every month there is an improvement, but still the methodologies are not precise. And until we cannot measure precisely these quantities, there cannot be really regulation for that. There is the German Food Safety Ministry, this is not the right name, so Andreas will forgive me for this, are working on limits, so detection limits, 0.5 milligram per kilo, for example, in the case of chocolate, and 0.2 milligram per kilo for dry food. And this is only hypothesis. So the institutions are working on this, but there is no law at the moment. Everything is in development. But anyway, as we talk about food safety, it's important that we know it and that we take the maximum measure to avoid it. Why are we talking about this? Because, I mean, we are part of the food industry, and in the food industry, the safety of our consumers, of our customers, and the reputation of our brand is pretty important. So I give you one example. In 2009, Food Watch, that is one of the consumer association that really have a look to how to protect the consumers, tested a bench of 50 products from the shelf of the supermarket. And out of these 50 products, so food stuff, they found 21% of the samples that were contaminated by aromatic hydrocarbons and 92% contaminated by saturated hydrocarbons. And of course, this was not a good finding, because MOSH and MOAH can have effect on the human health. So the aromatics are the most dangerous, let me say, substances, because they can have cancerogenic effect, meaning they can create, on the long run, cancer, risk of cancer. Saturated hydrocarbons are less dangerous, but they can accumulate on your liver, on your tissues, for example. So if you have a daily intake by eating industrial food, for example, you may have a problem later on. So it's really important that we take care about this, because if you are in the food industry, you for sure know better than me that the product recall from the market can really damage your brand, damage your sales, damage your reputation. And this is something you want really to avoid. So we, Klüber Lubrication, act as a partner in the market. And whenever we visit your plants, we support, we suggest lubricants, we take care also about these aspects, not only of the components lifetime, of the bearings of the chain, but we also propose you the product that allow you to reduce this risk at a very possible minimum. We want to give you now some best practice, some example of how to decrease the risk of contamination by mineral oil in general, and specifically by MOSH MOAH. So our first suggestion is to make together with us or with your trusted lubrication partner risk assessment on the application where you have the highest risk of mineral oil contamination. So for example, if you have a big gearbox or of a fan, for example, that is ventilating some part of the machine in your line, and the product with the leak, this is maybe one of the applications you should first focus. The second step could be, once you have identified the most critical application, review the lubricant that you use. Ask yourself or ask your lubrication partner, is there any other lubricants that can help me to minimize the risk? Is there a product that doesn't contain mineral oil or doesn't contain MOSH MOAH inside? There might be two answers, yes or not. And using a lubricant that doesn't contain MOSH MOAH at all is not always the best choice. This is why you need a specialized partner in this selection. Why? Because MOSH MOAH sometimes are contained in the additive package. And the additive package in the lubricants sometimes gives special feature to the lubricants. In the example again of a gearbox that contains oil, MOSH MOAH additive could give, for example, a higher compatibility to sealing material. And you well know that the seals is very important to avoid leakages of oil outside of the gearbox. So sometimes you have really to think twice together with your partner if using a product that may contain some traces of MOSH MOAH is still worth for the application or not. Imagine that you're using, for example, a vegetable oil that doesn't contain, of course, any MOSH MOAH inside. Is the vegetable oil working well inside the gearbox? For sure, no, because it's not stable to oxidation. It will increase this acidity. It's not really compatible with seals, meaning that this acidity will, take material out of the seal. The seal will shrink, and you will have a massive leakage out of the gearbox. So the gearbox will get broken, you will stop your line, and you will have massive leakage of a product that is then contaminated by iron, by wear component, and oxidated, fall into your food line. This is why very important to have a trusted partner that can give you the better suggestion when it comes to avoid the risk of contamination and keep your line very efficient. Sometimes there is no solution. So what we usually do is talking to our OEM partners, component manufacturer, to help the food producer, the food processing company, to maybe improve the mechanical design of the machine. Use different kind of sealing material, different kind of design of the machine that can avoid the lubricants to get in contact with the food stuff. So how can we support you in this? Actually, Klüber has the widest range of NSF H1 lubricants. So there is 99.9% of chance that if you work with Klüber, there is a product that is NSF registered and is safer for your application. As we said, when we visit your line, we also support you on reducing the risks. So we don't only focus, is that components, that bearings, that gears well lubricated with the right lubricants, but we also have a look for you on the risk that this application is bringing on your production line. Is this a potential risk of leakage? Is the product really compatible with the material that are in contact? So we go a little bit beyond. We also help you to prepare lube charts, because we mentioned in the beginning human mistakes. Human mistakes can really cause massive contamination and being potential danger to your brand and to your business. So we help you to create lube charts that are easy to be used by the operators, by the lubricants operator, for example, using different colors or different symbols in order to avoid the mix-up of H1 lubricants and industrial lubricants, and make sure that the right products go into the right application. Then, of course, training is very important. When we talk about people, it's important. We are doing a bit today, sharing the knowledge, understanding why lubrication is important, and why lubrication can also bring risk if it's not well done and it's not well prepared with a specialized lubrication part. This is my part. Now we will talk a little bit about what are the trends in the food market that can also bring some benefit to you, and I will hand it over now back to Andreas.
Okay, hello. Thank you, Paolo, for explaining this, especially MOSH MOAH part. I think this was not very easy to understand for everybody, because this is something which is also for us, for Klüber, quite new. But I think meanwhile, we have a lot of experience with this one. And whenever you are confronted with MOSH MOAH, we are happy to support. So let's have a look at market trends. The word which everybody heard every day is sustainability, and maybe also Industry 4.0. And what it is, what we can contribute on sustainability. Okay. One aim which everybody of you, or every company has, is always to reduce the materials which you use, to reduce the waste which you produce, also to reduce energy consumption, to reduce the emissions which your company is giving up during production, reduction of water consumption. Nobody is considering this normally, how much water is used for producing anything. And finally, also to increase health and safety of your operation and also of the products which you manufacture. So the contribution which we can give while selling or manufacturing lubricants is, while manufacturing mainly synthetic lubricants, we can help to reduce the amount, the quantity of lubricant which is used for a certain application. We can help to reduce the energy consumption if you use the right lubricant for every application, especially while using synthetic lubricants, which is automatically reducing your emissions. If you consume less energy, you will have less emissions during your production. While using food grade products, of course, you increase the health of the people working in your plant, because they are not coming in contact with dangerous goods, and also you increase the safety of the product which you are manufacturing. Good. Lower lubricant consumption. What does this mean? This means if you have less lubricant during your production process, you need less product to buy, meaning you have lower transport costs. You have lower consumption during the use of lubricants, and finally you have also less product which you finally have to throw away at the end of the service life. The correct lubricant selection will also increase the hygiene situation in your plant. You have less cleaning of the machine, and finally, again, which is already mentioned, less lubricant disposal, and this also includes the packaging material and what Paolo already also mentioned, for example, cleaning agents, which are not to be used in this case. So, and I like very much this chart. We, while using the correct lubricant, we cannot promise to save hundreds of thousands of dollars. But this example shows very well the highest cost during an operation process is almost in every industry the energy consumption. So, and just assume this is an average consumption of 32% of the total operating costs. While using the correct lubricant, mainly synthetic lubricant, you can save up to 3% of energy costs. And I don't know whether you have an idea how high is the energy cost in your plant during 1 year, but I think this adds up in several hundred thousand. So 3% of several hundred thousand is already quite a nice amount. The second biggest part of the operating costs is your labor cost. So meaning the guys doing the maintenance and the repair. And while using the correct lubricant, you have to do less re-lubrication, and the machine is better protected, meaning you have also reduced time for doing maintenance for repair. And the last part, spare parts. While using the right lubricant, for example, you can protect your bearing, and instead of, I don't know, maybe 6 months, a bearing will last, let's say, 1 year. And this will also save a lot of money in regards of not using too much spare parts. So all in all, this is just an average estimation from our side. And we can say while using the correct lubricants, in this case, we can bring up a saving to 6% during the whole operation circle of your product. And I think 6% is already a nice result. So this was mainly what Paolo and myself wanted to tell you about lubricants and lubrication. We are now coming to the end of our presentation. I know some parts maybe are a little bit confusing. So if you have questions, we can either clarify it right away, or definitely we can do it by email if you have more extended questions. So I hand back to Yasin. Yasin,
thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. It was a lot of information about the lubricants and the application. It was amazing. To everybody, if you have any question, please feel free to ask. From my end, I have 2 questions. First is, you mentioned a little bit about the power consumption. I just want to understand how a lubricant can, or the application of the lubricant can contribute to a reduction of the power consumption of a machine, or so. If you can develop this point, it will be great.
You mean while using the right lubricant, how we can help to reduce the power consumption? Correct your question?
Yes. The right lubricants, the interval of the time between we use the lubricant, I mean the working hour, the number of working hour before we have to use the lubricant again. So how this behavior can contribute to a reduction of power consumption?
Okay, let me try to give a general answer. Okay, we are mainly working with synthetic lubricants. So, and I think this goes without saying, but synthetic lubricants are superior compared to mineral oils, because a lot of customers or a lot of operators always tend to mineral oils because mineral oils are cheaper. Huh? They want to save, and they do not consider, okay, if I spend more money in the lubricant, we can use it longer and we can reach energy reduction and stuff like this. So a synthetic lubricants, simply said, provides a better lubricating film. If whatever, a chain or a gearbox or whatever you lubricate is having a better lubricating film on its friction partners, you have less friction, and less friction means you need less energy to drive this gearbox, this chain, whatever it is. This is, let's say, the simple general answer to this one.
Yes, very good. Is there anything that differ Klüber from other manufacturer of lubricant, or just this type of materials?
Okay, mainly in regards of food grade lubricants, and we are talking here to people who are producing food stuff. I would say that we Klüber consider us as, in regards of food grade lubricants, a #1 in the world. Paolo already mentioned that according to our knowledge, no other lubricant supplier has such a huge amount of H1 approved lubricants. And Paolo already mentioned we can cover almost every application. We said 99%. Huh?
Yeah.
And Whatever application you have, we can offer a food grade approved lubricant. And we have, I don't know, Paolo, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 6 or 7 plants which are already approved to manufacture food grade lubricants. 6 plants around the world. So it's not only here in Munich and Germany, we have also in China or in the United States, in Spain where we produce it worldwide. And well, I think maybe the main secret, what differs us from the competitor is everybody knows Total or Shell or ExxonMobil, and they are exploring mainly oil, and they are also producing lubricants. But the production of lubricants is this part of the business. And we are dedicated to specialty lubricants, and we do this 100% compared to competitors. We are only focusing on specialties. You will never find, let's say, an engine oil for your car. This is something which we do not have. This is not a specialty. We call this a U2 product. So, and while doing specialties, we are only working with special selected raw materials. And I think Paolo already mentioned this. Not every raw material is suitable for a food grade lubricant. And sometimes we are doing tests and said, okay, this would be the best material to improve heat resistance or whatever, but this product is, this raw material is not approved being food grade lubricant. So we have to find a new one. And I think this is something which we do in our laboratory with more than 200 people doing tests and development. I don't know whether any other company is doing this in regards of food grade lubricants.
I think the other advantage that really distinguishes Klüber from others is if you ever received a visit to your plants by a Klüber expert or by trusted channel partners, we don't ask you, give me the list of lubricants and we provide you a better offer. No, we want to go to see the machine, to see the production line. So our experts provide you really an advice. Doesn't matter what product you are providing, doesn't matter if we will sell the lubricants later on. We want to help you. We want to provide added value. If not, we have no reason to exist. So we give you advice technically, we give you advice from a risk assessment perspective, avoiding risk of contamination, and at the end also maybe saving energy, allowing you to achieve your goals in sustainability. This is the way Klüber works.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much. Let's see if we have any question here.
We received one question directly to IAOM. I will read it. He sent it now also to everyone. From Isa.
Yes. Yes, Isa is just asking, can you explain in solid lubricants?
Solid lubricants?
Yes.
Yeah, they are, I mean, in very simple words, it's a very complex thing. So a chemical guy could talk for 2 hours about that. But imagine that they are, for example, ceramic spheres that allow you to separate the 2 sliding surfaces. Okay. So sometimes you need solids that can carry the load more efficient and also separate the two surfaces. Yeah. So in the example of pastes, pastes are used in screws and bolts to avoid the screw to adhere to the bolt, and then you cannot dismount it anymore. So it's lubricants that separate 2 surfaces in a very simple words.
Thank you.
Yes, go on, Sherihan.
No, it's fine. We'll read one more question. Would you like to?
Yes, you can read it.
Yes.
We want to hear your voice.
All right. Well. So we'll take one more question as we're running out of time for the next session. It's from Amjad from Azuri Foods. Hi, Andreas. We use a specific lubricant oil specially designed for our compressor machines. What happens if we change to your lubricant type, since the machine supplier has specific for their machines supplied?
Okay. First of all, during the warranty time, you should not switch the recommendation of the manufacturer, because otherwise you will risk the warranty. But if the warranty is over, you are free to switch, and whenever you change a lubricant, it's important to tell the lubricant supplier what type of machine is it, and especially what type of oil was in before, because not every oil or every lubricant is mixed with each other. But I can assure you, if it is about Klüber, we will always find a lubricant which will protect the machine the same way like the oil or the grease which was recommended by the OEM before.
Great. Great. Thank you very much. I think we are running out of time. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. We still have a lot of questions. At the end, Jürgen, Paolo, just general recommendation or advice to our people in the meat industry, and we can close the session with that.
Yeah, maybe as a last word, what I already said in the beginning, lots of people underestimate lubrication, and as we are dedicated to lubrication, we try to explain and bring it closer to them. So you have our contact data here, and feel free whenever you have any question regarding lubricants, lubrication, we are here to answer, to help, to support. So not a single question is a silly question. Please just be free and contact us whenever it is needed. Huh?
Wonderful, wonderful.
Don't always go for the cheaper, because maybe the cheaper is at the end the most expensive. Select your trusted partner and with it. If it's Klüber, we are happy. If not, your choice.
No, totally agree.